You added fertilizer, the plant is still just sitting there, and you're starting to wonder if you missed something. Maybe the bone meal wasn't enough, maybe the soil is off, maybe the whole planting hole setup didn't work the way it was supposed to. I want to stop you right there before you change anything, because if you watch the tomato hole video and follow the steps, the ground is fine. What's blocking the system is above it. 3 things that prevent every nutrient you planted from reaching the roots, and none of them respond to more fertilizer. That's what I'm going to walk you through today, and if you haven't seen the planting hole video yet, I'll leave it in the description. It's worth watching first because it sets up everything this one builds on. But if you already did the work and you're waiting on results that aren't showing up, stay here. This is exactly where you need to be right now. Here's the thing nobody says clearly enough about fertilizer. It's not fuel. You don't add it and watch the plant immediately respond. It's more like a key, and a key only works if the lock is ready to open. When people see a tomato plant sitting still after planting, the instinct is to add more fertilizer, more water. What they're actually doing is handing more keys to a lock that isn't open yet. The keys pile up, nothing moves, and the frustration builds because more effort is producing exactly 0 result. The 3 things I'm going to show you are the reason that lock stays closed. They all operate in the same window, those first 10 to 14 days after the plant goes in the ground. And they all have one thing in common. None of them show up on the fertilizer bag. The first one is soil temperature, not air temperature, not the forecast. The actual temperature of the ground 2 inches below the surface. Tomato roots stop absorbing nutrients below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that threshold, the cellular processes that move calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus from soil into root tissue slow down so dramatically that they're essentially paused. You can have the most carefully prepared planting hole in the neighborhood, and the plant still won't pull from it because the system needs warmth to run. I used to think putting tomatoes in the ground in late April gave them a head start. It took a couple of seasons to see what was actually happening. Those early plants sat in cold soil for 2 weeks, burning through their transplant energy reserves without building anything. Plants that went in later into warmer soil caught up within 10 days and kept going. The early ones never had the advantage I thought I was giving them. The fix is the same 2-finger check from the planting hole video, but now you're not checking moisture. Push 2 fingers 2 inches down and hold for 5 seconds. If the soil feels cold, the plant is not absorbing what you put in the hole. It doesn't matter what's in there. The lock isn't open yet. 60 degrees is the minimum. 65 is where tomatoes start moving with real purpose. Even when the soil is warm enough, there's a second force operating at the same time. This one is harder to see because it looks almost identical to the first. Transplant stress. When a tomato moves from a container into open ground, something specific happens that most gardening content skips over entirely. The root tips that were used to a contained, consistent environment suddenly face open soil. Different moisture levels, different temperature swings, and completely different pressure on the root structure. The plant's immediate response is to stop growing and stabilize. Here's a way to picture it. You move to a completely different city. New house, new street. The first week you're not decorating. You're not thinking about the garden or the neighbors. You're figuring out where things are and making sure the basics work. The tomato plant is doing the same thing. The fertilizer is there. The plant isn't ready to pull from it yet. This is the part that's hard to accept because the plant looks like it needs something. The instinct is always to give it more. But fertilizer applied during transplant stress lands on a plant that isn't in receiving mode. The nutrients sit in the soil, the plant isn't pulling from them at full capacity, and adding more doesn't speed anything up. It just adds mineral pressure to a root system that's already under stress. The window is about 10 to 14 days, the same window the planting hole video mentioned. During that time, the plant needs stability, not input. Leaving it alone is not neglect, it's the right move. But there's one thing people do during that window that actively works against everything already in the ground. This one is the hardest to let go of because it feels like care. Watering too much in the first week. After planting, the instinct is to keep the soil consistently moist. The plant just went through stress. Water feels like the right response, but roots need oxygen just as much as they need moisture. Waterlogged soil pushes oxygen out of the root zone. When oxygen is gone, the roots physically cannot absorb nutrients, not because the nutrients aren't there, but because the uptake process requires oxygen to function. A tomato plant sitting in overwatered soil is surrounded by everything it needs and unable to access any of it. The bone meal is there, the calcium is there, the magnesium is there, and the root system you spent time building is slowly being suffocated. A plant that looks slightly droopy in the afternoon heat is not always thirsty. It's often a plant managing transplant stress, conserving water, doing its internal work. The same two-finger check from the planting hole video gives you the answer: 2 inches down, 5 seconds. If it still feels moist, leave it alone. Check again in the morning. If the plant has recovered and is standing upright, the roots are doing exactly what they need to do. So when does the lock actually open? There's a specific signal. Once you know it, you'll never mistake a waiting plant for a struggling plant again. New leaf growth at the very top of the plant. A fresh set of leaves pushing out from the center growing tip. That's the moment. It means the root system has stabilized in the new soil, the soil temperature is working in its favor, and the plant has crossed from survival mode into growth mode. Until that moment, everything in the hole is waiting. After that moment, the plant starts pulling from it with purpose. Most people see that new growth and don't register what it actually means. They just notice the plant is finally moving. But that moment is the root system announcing that the lock just opened. That's when the system you built in the planting hole starts to run. A backyard that produces reliably doesn't come from adding more. It comes from understanding what the plant is doing at each stage and giving it what it needs at that specific moment, instead of what feels productive from the outside. That gap between reacting to what a plant looks like and understanding what it's doing is where most of the difference between a hobby garden and a real food system gets made. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're at right now. Are you still in the waiting window, or have you seen that new top growth yet? Tell me your zone too. I read every single one, and the answers are going to shape the next few videos. If this way of thinking about your backyard resonates, subscribe. Every week through the growing season, one topic, one practical move that actually changes how much food your backyard produces. The fertilizer isn't the problem, the system is already in the ground. It just needs the right conditions to run. I'd go check that soil temperature before adding anything else today. If it's under 60 degrees, that single number explains everything, and nothing else needs to change until it does.